Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic, fun-filled episode of Beer Time with Big Bird, that once weekly show where we kick off the weekend by cracking open a fresh cold beer and diving into some of the weekly shenanigans that we've been privy to over the last week, obviously. I am, of course, your lovely host, that big bird-looking fellow they call Colin. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a little stuffy today. Feeling a little under the weather. 'Tis the season for the head colds and the whatnots. So I will try to refrain from all the sniffing that I'm trying to do so that my nose doesn't run all over the microphone. So that's fun. Hey, Kevin, what's up, buddy? Thanks for coming by. Deb, you're not too late. You're just in time for us to kick off the show. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you're getting into a fantastic weekend here. I know I am. I know I'm getting into a great weekend because, I didn't light the sign up. Son of a bitch. Where's my little remote? Uh-oh, we lost the remote. There it is. Because back there behind me on the thing, hit the button. No, maybe it ran out of batteries. Oh, no. Oh, no. That's all right. We'll have to change the batteries on the old clock. We got podcast episode 139 coming out tomorrow. It's going to be fantastic. We have just a brim of overflowing show tomorrow. It's going to be insane. A lot of epic grab bag stuff. It's definitely not been slow in the news world for the last couple weeks. So we're going to be kicking things off tomorrow. Obviously, Don's got a couple. I think he said 2 or 3. Let me ask you this questions that we'll get into, and then I'm going to turn the tables on him, and I've got a slightly different version of Let Me Ask You This. Kind of, I don't want to steal his thing. It's too cool. So I'm going to do a little kind of a new segment. We're going to pilot it tomorrow during the show, during part 1. And then we'll be doing that same segment right here on this show every week. It's going to be great. But yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about, I don't want to give anything away because Donovan might be listening to this. So just tune in for that one. That's going to be good. We've got the grab bag of topics is so big. Probably going to end up doing 1 or 2 random ones in the beginning segment, depending on how long the other segments go and how long combo goes. And then we're going to be diving into Twitter. Obviously, it's a thing that's happening right now. There's a whole nother. Matt Taibbi is doing his second drop. I think he just finished right before we went live. I really debated whether or not we were going to talk about that today, but I think we're going to save that to tomorrow because we're going to run through Barry Weiss's. We'll do a small recap on the original Twitter files bomb that we did right here on the show last week, but we'll just do a really quick refresher on that. Then we'll start bridging the gap between all the fuckery that happened between parts 1, 2, 3, and then it looks like there's going to be a bunch of other stuff going on Twitter tonight. Some stuff involving child exploitation material and the lack of funding and enforcement in old Twitter, and there might be a live discussion with Elon Musk, Eliza Blue, maybe even Jack Dorsey, because the two of them are fighting right now on Twitter, and it's pretty epic. So I'm gonna keep my ear to the ground on that one, and we'll get all up to date tomorrow during part 2. Part 3, it's all going to be about authoritarianism abroad and at home. We'll be looking at China, the COVID-0 stuff that's been going on, the protests, we'll dive into all that. We'll be looking at Iran, and then we'll be taking a look here at home and some of the authoritarianism going on here, and then we'll be examining all of our current landscape, the stuff we've been through for the last few years, and putting that on balance against our lovely Constitution and see how the two stack up. And then, of course, we got more grab bag in part 4. There's too much to talk about. I mean, look at this list. This is the grab bag list. It's just, there's so much of it. There's so many things on there. The light is bad, but, it's a full sheet of paper, and it's all just grab bag topics. So we'll see. But today, what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to drink beer first. Cheers, everybody. I'm drinking an Oktoberfest again because it's my favorite beer of all time, and I have so much of it. We're gonna keep drinking it because it's Oktoberfest and it's my favorite, and I have so much. So hopefully we didn't overpour. Look at that. Cheers. As per our usual arrangement, a terrible pour on the podcast. Oh, it smells so good. But we're going to talk about the prisoner release, the prisoner swap, Brittany Griner and the lovely merchant of death himself, Victor Bout, formerly known as Nicolas Cage in that one movie, Lord of War. I love this beer. It's so good. Makes me feel happy on Friday. So yeah, we'll just dive right into it, shall we? Boom. Brittany Griner, WNBA star, was arrested in Russia in February because she Alex, Prost, my good buddy. How are you, dude? Thanks for stopping by. Happy fucking Friday, Alex. It's been a minute. I miss you, buddy. Hope you're good. Okay. So yes, she was nabbed up when she was flying into Russia back in February. She had gotten a job working some pro basketball over in Russia, so she was going to be over there during the off season of the WNBA and making some real money because I guess they pay some pretty decent money over there. But she got caught at the airport with a vape cartridge of weed, a weed vape cartridge. I've been listening to a lot of commentators and whatnot talk about this, and you could tell none of them have ever really smoked weed because they all call it like hashish oil, because I think that's what the Russian government ended up calling it, or THC oil or cannabis oil. It's a weed pen. She had a weed cartridge for a weed pen. That's what it is. And obviously you can't be having that stuff in Russia. So she got locked up, and they knew for a fact she was a high profile individual. They knew exactly who she was coming into the country. They had made the deals with her. I mean, it was a very high profile arrest and detention. She went through a trial, or as close as you can get a trial, a weed cartridge. Yes. Like, I don't have them anymore because I don't smoke weed anymore. But, yeah, they're like that big. It's all concentrated THC oil. And, yeah, it's a whole deal. But yeah, she got nabbed up, locked up, and has been under arrest and detained over there for we going on like 9 months now, 10 months. And she was just sent over, I think, a couple months ago maybe, over to an actual penal colony to go start doing some time. She was sentenced to, I think, 8 or 9 years, which is an interesting sentencing, but we will dive more into that as we go. So that's kind of the lay of the land originally. That's how she got locked up. And but Thursday, an agreement had been reached between our two governments to do a prisoner exchange with the merchant of death himself, Victor Bout. So before we dive into this, let's take a look at who Victor Bout is. I made a reference earlier to him essentially being Nicolas Cage from the movie Lord of War, because if you have seen that movie, it is loosely based on the life of Victor Bout. He's a Russian arms dealer. I believe in the movie they're from Ukraine, but in this particular case, in reality, he's actually Russian. But he was a notorious arms salesman. He used to pick up old Soviet era airplanes and basically just kind of take them because they were just sitting around because the USSR was done at that point, and then he would just fly weapons all over Africa and the Middle East and South America and just became massive. Ended up getting locked up in a sting in Thailand and ultimately was extradited to the United States, sentenced to 25 years, I do believe, and I think he served about 10 or 12 of them at this point in time. So that's the two players we've got involved here. It's a hell of a trade. So we've got a WNBA player that smuggled, quote unquote, in a weed cartridge into Russia, and we have probably I would think it's probably safe to say the most notorious and prolific arms dealer in our lifetimes including yours, Deborah, because I'm much younger than you. So that's a whole deal. So now we've got WNBA basketball player, Merchant of Death. Those were the two players at this point, and then they finally agreed to swap. So that all went down, and Brittany Griner is back now in the States, and Victor is now back with his family over in Russia. This was all facilitated too by the Saudis, I believe. I think it was what's his name? Mohammed bin Salman down over there in Saudi Arabia. They kind of acted as the negotiators, the middlemen. That's where the actual trade took place. They both flew to that place, got on their respective airplanes, and went back home. So that's all done now. But the story is way more than just what happened. The main story that I'm really want to talk about today is the fallout, the takes, the different sidesism, things that are being missed. And then we'll go ahead and we'll throw our own take on it at the end, because I could tell you right now, my take has evolved since I first heard it. Cat is going to knock over the Christmas tree. $5. $5 says the cat's going to. Come on, sweetheart. Don't be playing with that. Don't make me get the hose. Don't make me get the hose. Give her a little squirt with a little squirt bottle. Okay. So the first major take I started hearing right off the bat, because the first podcast I was listening to at the time was a thing called, you're going to call me out here like that? I mean, I'm just trying, you come here for factual information, Deborah. Let's be realistic here. I'm just a child is what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything about you. I'm just saying I'm basically a child. Come on now, everybody's going to be older than me, except for young Alex over there. Okay. First take, I was listening to a podcast called Drinkin Bros, one of my favorite podcasts in the world. Very, very cop-friendly, very, very vet-friendly, very, very vet-focused. One of the co-hosts is a vet. And so their instant take was, fuck this and everything that happened. We have a U.S. Marine detained in Russia right now. How the hell did we go from Merchant of Death equals WNBA player instead of an ex-Marine vet? How did this possibly happen? This is absolutely insane. I mean, it's a take I'm seeing a lot, and it's a very understandable take, especially off the bat. And I got no shade against anybody that feels that way. This, no matter which way you cut it, this trade was definitely one-sided. More on that from the Russian perspective to come. So this kind of got me thinking, because I heard a little bit about the quote-unquote former Marine. I know any Marines out there could be like, there's no such thing as a former Marine. I know. I got it. So that got me thinking. Who is this guy? Who else do we have in Russia? What else could have been at play here? What are we dealing with? So I did a little Googling and found out that we have other people, including our Marine. Paul Whelan is the Marine's name, and there's apparently two others over there being held in Russia as of right now. Don't click the button. Come on. Yeah. We don't care. Paul Whelan. Whelan is a corporate security executive. He traveled to Moscow in December 2018 for a wedding and was detained by Russian authorities on espionage charges. In 2020, the former Marine received a 16-year prison sentence in what the U.S. called a sham trial. Whelan, 52, was ordered to serve at a prison labor camp in the province of Mordovia, which is like southeast of Moscow. Not like, I looked it up earlier, it's not exactly like in the middle of the Siberia or anything. It's just kind of, it's bumfuck Russia. What are you going to do? Last month, Whelan was moved to a prison hospital for undisclosed reasons, and that got no answers on that when I was looking. So I did a little more digging, because I had heard that this U.S. Marine was dishonorably discharged, and I go, okay, well, why? So I just started looking. See, he was, before we get to that reason, the spying charges, I feel, are pretty kind of bullshit. obviously. I think this was probably Russia's attempt to try to create a political prisoner for bargaining chips in the future, because he was over there for a friend's wedding, obviously, and he was meeting with a Russian friend of his at the time, and he was seen getting past a USB drive by intelligence, I guess, Russian intelligence, I would assume FSB, and they took that to mean he was a spy. He's doing espionage right now, when his case was that the USB drive was full of photos and videos from the wedding, and that was it. And he's just been there without any real reason at all. Versus Brittany Griner actually bringing an illegal substance, internationally into a country where it is indeed illegal. So there's that. Whether or not Paul Whelan is indeed an agent of the state and possibly an espionage tool himself, only the government knows, I guess, at this point. But it doesn't really appear that he is. I don't know. But anyways, I looked into his discharge, and he was indeed dishonorably discharged, which is just a thing that happens. The circumstances around it, from what I heard through the grapevine, are kind of, they are what they are. It happens to people, and this was a long time ago, so it's no, I don't hold that necessarily against him. I don't really care. But I did find, after he appealed the initial court-martial, I looked it up, and I found the actual, the summary judgment, I guess if you call it, the opinion of the court that declined his, what do you call that? His appeal. Declined his appeal, and indeed went through with the bad conduct discharge. It's a military judge sitting as an appeals court convicted the appellant, consistent with his pleas, of attempted larceny, 3 specifications of dereliction of duty, making a false official statement, wrongfully using another social security number, and 10 specifications of making and uttering checks without having sufficient funds in his accounts for payment, in violation of Articles 80, 92, 107, and 134 UCMJ, 10 U.S. codes, blah, 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 blah. He was sentenced to 60 days restriction, reduction in pay to E4, and a bad conduct discharge, and this ruling was upheld. So that was fact check true. That happened. Got it. So that's who we're dealing with on one hand. Who else were we dealing with being detained over there? Mark Fogel, a history teacher from Pittsburgh who taught the children of U.S. diplomats abroad, was detained in Moscow in August 2021. He had with him a small amount of medical marijuana he used for chronic back pain. In June, Fogel, 61, was sentenced to 14 years in a labor camp. Great cover for an alphabet agency asset. I mean, Deborah, I'm not saying he ain't. It really would be. It really would be. I mean, that is a very useful asset. It does. I really do. I'm so curious about like the post-Cold War espionage between the United States and Russia, because it's been so long since we had like any like real beefs with each other, like nationally. Obviously, we got this whole deal going on now and all this, but I mean, obviously manufactured, but it just, what were we spying on Russia for back then? What were they spying? I don't know. I want to hear that story. It sounds really interesting. So let's talk about Mark Fogel. He's 61 and sentenced 14 years in a labor camp. The federal government has not designated Fogel as wrongfully detained. I believe this is his local representative in Pennsylvania, introduced a resolution last month to inquire into Fogel, has not been designated as wrongly detained. I also have a statement here from the Bob Casey, senator for Pennsylvania, alongside Fetterman now. That's his better half now, I guess. Essentially asking for the same thing. He wants the State Department to look into this and see what we can do about getting this guy out. But, another case of bringing, narcotics into another country and thinking you can get away with it, I guess. Oh, excuse me. And then we have Sarah Kravenik. Now this one was this one goes deeper. The other two you can have a lot of good arguments and be like, man, that's some bullshit. Let's get them out of there. But She, 46, moved to Russia from Fresno, California 5 years ago to teach a Russian private school. Last year, she was involved in a domestic abuse situation with her boyfriend and allegedly grabbed a knife to defend herself, nicked him slightly. She was arrested by Russian authorities and detained for roughly a year. Despite her boyfriend retracting the charges, she was released last month, but detained again at a Moscow airport when she tried to leave the country, according to People magazine. She is not incarcerated, but is also not authorized to return home. She is waiting in a holding facility while she figures out how to leave Russia. Friends are raising money on a GoFundMe. The State Department told People that requested to talk with her have been repeatedly denied or delayed by Russian authorities. That one's weird. That's a weird one. There's just, especially if she's not officially being held, it's like they're just keeping her there and we're just not going to do anything official, because if it's not official, what's the State Department going to do, I guess? So those are the other people that are over in Russia as of right now. A lot of people pissed off. A lot of people pissed off right now. I get the concept. One of the big takes I keep hearing these days is that, if you're a U.S. citizen and you're locked up abroad, apparently for whatever reason, people believe that it's the government's responsibility to get you out at some point, I guess, which I think is strange in a way. Like, I get it. I get that. And I mean, I'm sure if I was locked up abroad, that would also be a thing. But I mean, if you're caught at the airport with weed in your bag and you're getting into a new country, I mean, probably should have double checked your baggage. I mean, bad idea. That just seems like your basic bad idea, and whatever happens, happens. But in Brittany Griner's situation, it gets slightly more complicated, because regardless of what you think of her, regardless of the validity you see in the trade, which obviously I think it's definitely insane, you could tell she is a political prisoner, and she was snatched up for those reasons, because I did a little cross-checking on this earlier, so don't mind the Wikipedia article. I confirmed this with like multiple websites. This one was just the easiest to pull up. But it is indeed illegal to be having cannabis, to be having weed in Russia. Possession of up to 6 grams is considered an administrative crime, whereas more than 7 grams is considered a serious criminal offense, as regulated by Russian Criminal Code, Article 228. However, the legalization of cannabis remains an aspiration for many Russians. I guess there's actually a pretty big move over in Russia to try to kind of, legalize the shit. But the following penalties apply to convictions for large-scale possession. Fines of 40,000 rubles, 480 hours of compulsory labor, or 2 years of corrective labor, up to 3 years in prison or restricted freedoms. And then it has the little entry here. Brittany Griner was sentenced to 9 years in prison for smuggling 0.7 grams of cannabis oil into Russia in her luggage. But that was not... Another American citizen named Mark Fogel was sentenced to 14 years in prison for smuggling 14 vape cartridges and marijuana in 2022. Every other account I read about Mark Fogel was small amounts. They said small amount of medical marijuana. Well, 14 vape cartridges is like, that's a chunk, and some other marijuana. But is that illegal according to U.S. federal law? I wonder how the people in prison in the U.S. for weed feel. Word. Word. Well, hey, don't you know that Joe Biden just released all of them, Alex? I mean, come on now. Nobody's in jail for minor possession of marijuana anymore. Come on. That's ridiculous. But yeah, is it illegal according to U.S. federal law? As far as what, Deborah? Like having weed? Is that what you're talking about? Because I'm fairly sure, like federally, yeah, it's all still illegal. It's all still a Schedule I controlled substance for some fucking reason. One of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow in part 3 when it comes to like our country and authoritarianism. Obviously, we have multiple states in the union now that have decided to just not follow federal law in multiple reasons, in multiple cases, in multiple situations, but particularly involving weed legalization, and I got no problem with that. So, I mean, I'm down with it. But as a guy who has visited multiple other countries around the world, it definitely does you need to be doing your homework before you travel abroad like that, man. People don't play by the same rules that we do here. They just don't. That's just never the way it works. But anyways, when you look at the criminal code and her sentence, they also tagged on like smuggling charges and things like that, which is probably what really bumped up her sentence to like the 7 years. But either way, I'm thinking possession of that amount. Yeah, it just depends. I mean, federally, I think it's illegal to have any of it. Period. Just because it's a Schedule I controlled substance. So that's federally, it would be illegal. But I think in Washington State, Alex, help me out here because I may not remember. I think you can have up to like what is it? An ounce? Is that a thing? An ounce? Not a gram? Yeah, a gram small, an ounce. I think that's the whole thing. You can have a decent amount on you at one time. Singapore executes for any amount. Yes, you can have an ounce. That's right. Yeah, Singapore's hard, man. Singapore is hard. Don't be accidentally bringing a vape cartridge in there because you're just going to get a wall. That's how that's going to work. Oh yeah, so that's generally what's going on here. But when you look at the legal ramifications there, generally speaking, it sounds like they were trying to stack charges and trying to really make her a political prisoner, which they knew exactly what they were doing. They're trying to do this because they know who Brittany Griner is, obviously, as long as it's in one container. So 1 ounce in one container. Got it. Otherwise, you're probably distributing, and then you're all fucked up. But I think the Russian government, they knew exactly what they were doing with Brittany Griner. They knew who she was. She's an Olympic gold medalist at this point. They had her on contract to come over there. They knew exactly who they were dealing with. So, I mean, if I'm Russia and I want a diplomatic bargaining chip, especially with everything else that's going on, this was right before the Ukraine invasion. It was early February, I believe, and Ukraine was 24, I think, in February, the 24th February. So it was right before that. I mean, I think they knew exactly what they're doing. They made her into a political prisoner for a reason, made it very public for a reason. And I think I think they got what they wanted. I mean, when we look at the trade that happened here, let's look at this. I pulled this up because this is relatively disturbing. I'm not going to play the whole video here. And I'll just kind of play it in the background as I talk over it because it's on Russian state television, and they're talking about the exchange for Griner and Boot, and they're obviously very, very excited to have Boot back. His family's very back. They see him they're calling him a hero and so forth, and they're making the point that the Americans did not bring their Marine back. He's a decorated war hero, this and that and the other thing, and I don't know how well the Russians will take the Victor Bout, though. He wasn't exactly on their side either. Nah, dude, that's the cool thing about Victor Bout, to be honest. He ran guns for people who needed guns and who could pay him. He was, I think one of his other side gigs, or his other names was, what was it? It's the sanction dodger or something like that. He was, if you were a nation had sanctions against you on the West, you could easily, you go through him and he'll hook you up with what you need. You don't have to worry about trying to get your stuff, dealing with the sanctions part of things like that. But yeah, on the Russian media, they're looking at this and really just bragging about it. I mean, mind you, this is just propaganda. It's propaganda everywhere. But they're essentially saying that they got Victor back home, a hero, and they look at the United States, seeing like we didn't get anything. All we did really was we left the decorated war hero, I think is what they call him, and they decided to go with the, quote, black lesbian who's hooked on drugs, which obviously is a pretty sharp dig at the United States, which, you know, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. We all see it. I mean, we know what happened here, I think. She's a celebrity, man. She's a big celebrity. Joe Biden's in office. How can you not do that? Oh yeah, and a domestic abuser. That's a whole thing too. I'm surprised they didn't hit on that in the RT, man. You guys are missing out on propaganda. You could be doing so much bigger things right now, RT. But yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I forget that whole thing. She was it like a proven deal or an accusations? I don't quite remember, but I remember hearing about it. So yeah, it's a whole deal. I guess it just runs in basketball. Well, and football. You don't hear a lot about that in baseball, I guess. But yeah, so there's that. It's a whole deal, man. I don't see anything really good coming from this trade, other than maybe a small political W for the Biden administration, at a time in which he feels like he's stacking small W's. And because on the world stage, we look like a fucking joke at this point. Ivan, what up, big dog? Good to see you, man. Whoever brokered the deal should be hung. I think that whoever brokered the deal should have probably read the art of the deal, because obviously they didn't. Because if Donald was here, bro, if the Donald was here, this would not be happening. This would be ridiculous. But I mean, when you look at it, man, it's a total joke, man. MBS, Alex, thank you very much. MBS, he helped broker this deal. He just made a laughingstock out of us. I mean, the whole thing, man. We're just the laughingstock of the fucking world now, and this is a perfect example of it. So it is what it is, man. Ivan, it's good to see you, bro. You be watching these Twitter drops, B? Is anybody else watching the Twitter stuff? There's been multiple drops since we were last here together on Friday. Wild stuff. Tonight at some point, I don't know if it's going on right now. It better not be. I'm supposed to do it later. Yeah, there's supposed to be a whole Twitter Spaces chat with Eliza Blue, one of the child exploitation and sex trafficking kind of advocates. She's supposed to be getting on there with Elon Musk and possibly Twitter former CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, because apparently there has, over the last number of years, in old school Twitter, in legacy Twitter, if you will, there was no actual funding towards like the department that takes down and, watches accounts that deal in child exploitation. And he's lying about it. And fucking Musk is blowing his ass up on Twitter right in front of him, and the two are getting at it. And it sounds like there might be a little brouhaha tonight live on Twitter. And I want that to happen. But it's also going to be, I'll be watching all these things. We've got Barry Weiss's thing going on now. That was December 8th. That was yesterday. So her Twitter Files Part 2, all about the blacklisting and shadow banning. And then Matt Taibbi's latest was the removal of Donald Trump between October 2020 and January 6th. And then Michael Schellenberger, I forget what he ran for governor of California at one point and didn't make it this last go around. But he's an author. He writes books. He does the whole thing. He's been on the speaking tours of all the shows. He's on Rogan. He goes on all sorts of things. He's a very interesting type of guy. He's I don't know. He's like a relatively unthreatening California progressive, if that's even a thing. But apparently he's going to be doing one. We got more Twitter drops to come tomorrow and on Sunday. So it's just going to be a whole deal. It's a whole deal. There are some amazing people out there, and Musk is definitely one of them. Amen, Ivan. I've said it before on the show, and I'm going to say it again. I hold that Elon Musk could possibly be one of the most important Americans in history. Boom. I just say that. I'm not good, not bad, important. Done a lot of crazy shit. This is definitely it's just adding him to the category here. It's just bumping him up in the list, I think, a little bit. And I just want everybody, if you're watching these Twitter things, if you watched last week's video about the original file drops, all the stuff we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Yeah, he's not American. Oh, well, is he now? Is he a dual citizen? We got to find this out. I know he's South African, but I thought he was a South African American. Come on. Elon Musk, citizen. If he's not, let's adopt his ass. Nationality, American, Canadian, South African. Ooh, bud. Canadian? Ooh, buddy. I don't know about that. I got questions now. Garrett's here. What up, Joseph? Between FTX and Twitter and all the many crazy things that have happened the past 2 years, so many times people have been called conspiracy theorists, conspiracy theorists, and all of these conspiracies are true. Fact check, true. I forget who I heard say it the other day. It was like all conspiracies now are just, they're just not predictions for the future, but the conspiracy of last year is today's fact check. I don't remember exactly what it was. Well, we'll just put it this way. He is the most important South African American possibly to have ever existed. Period. And again, if I don't have a citizenship right, let's make that happen, State Department. I know he's like persona non grata right now with the government, but come on, let's add that one to the list. We could use some heavy hitters. When America goes down here in a couple of years, we're gonna want something nice to look back on and be like, hey, we had some good stuff. Guy built some rockets, flew them up in the air, dug some holes, sold some flamethrowers, made some crazy ass cars and trucks, and did the whole thing. Oh yeah, and he personally bought and owned one of the biggest and most important social media platforms in the world to date, I should say. Yeah. So one final note before we kick out of here. I just want everybody to remember that if we're seeing all of this stuff come out through Twitter now, just remember that this is the only platform we're actually getting a peek behind the curtain. If it's happening on Twitter, if it happened on Twitter, it is definitely happening right now on YouTube. It's happening at Google, at Alphabet, at fucking Meta. Well, I don't know. There's probably worse things going on TikTok, but it's happening on all big tech platforms. It's happening everywhere. If we're seeing it here, this is just canary in the coal mine time. So be mindful. Just, try to utilize the platforms for what you can, but just don't expect much out of them because obviously they're out to get you. They're out to get us. That's the whole deal. And as time goes on, we will continue to find out more of how bad they had it out for us and how self-important they think they are. So until then, everybody, tomorrow at noon Pacific time, set your watches, set your clocks, do all the things. Be here at noon tomorrow for episode 139. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to, 6-7 hour show. It's going to be real hard to fit this one in. It's going to be a big one. There's just too much to cover. It is the year-end show. The last one for the year before we take our end of the year break. Obviously, you'll still see me here on Fridays at 4:30 Pacific time. I'll be here all the time. Are people really attacking electric substation? Who is doing this? It's Antifa. And yes, they are doing it, man. It's a whole it's not just the one case. This is a possible player for tomorrow's grab bag, by the way. There was that big case out in North Carolina, something like that. But there was also, they were hitting California, Oregon, and Washington State too. Like one within 2 hours of here. We didn't have any major issues. I think Antifa people are just bad at what they do. But that's where I'm putting my chips, man. It's a whole deal. All right, everybody. It's been real. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Really appreciate all the love, and I hope to see all of you guys tomorrow right here, same place, different time, Donovan will be here. It'll be awesome. We're going to drink some beers and talk about the world ending. It'll be great. Till then.